Welcome to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we'll be talking with Todd Bowler about breaking the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile world record. Todd was a member of the Tactical Response Group for a number of years, and for the last 20 or so years, burpees have been just one element of his training regime for that very strenuous job. With about 4 months worth of ramp-up training, Todd attempted the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile world record and actually achieved it. Welcome to Forest.chat, Todd.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Todd. It's really good to have you on the podcast. Todd, my listeners come from all different backgrounds and not everybody knows what a burpee is. And actually, even I had to look it up. Can you give us a description of what a burpee actually is?
Yeah, I think comes in a few shapes and forms, but the ones I've always done, the ones I did on for the record were basically a push-up, so chest to ground push-up to a squat and then a jump in the air so the feet are off the ground. Yeah, full push-up, full body motion up to a jump.
That's basically two instances where you're lifting your entire body weight. That takes a fair bit of strength, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and it was interesting which body parts hurt the most doing the training and doing the world record, but yeah, it wasn't what you'd think. But the broad jump, I will say, the actual jump up in the air was a jump forwards, and then where your feet land, you go down and do another burpee, broad jump forwards again, keep going all day.
That's how you actually travel along doing the burpee, is that when you jump up, you're jumping forwards at the same time.
That's right, yeah. And where you land is where you start your next burpee.
Does that mean you just effectively fall on your feet forwards, like you pivot from your feet?
No, I'll add one more element to that is that you had to stand upright, fully upright between each burpee. So it basically became a push-up, then a broad jump forward, and then a stand bolt upright, and then back down to the ground for the next push-up.
So, and did you move forward when you went down for your push-up?
Just a reasonable distance from your feet, so you don't have to put your hands on your feet, but just in front of your feet somewhere, yeah.
And are there more different variants of burpees?
I know people do a lot of, they do different things. They take away the push-up and they'll do different versions of them. I think they're all as good and as bad for you as each other, but the push-up one has always been my go-to because it hurts the most.
Right, and where did that willingness to hurt yourself the most come from?
I don't know. I think I was explaining to you before, you've got to be a bit twisted, but I mean, my tactical response group background's doing selection for that and going through the whole process, as well as jobs and challenges and training and everything that we had along the way, kind of drives you to push yourself hard. Also did surfboat rowing for many years and kind of chased the sports and the things that were the biggest challenge. So I guess burpees fits well into that because you can never master it. You're always pushing yourself a little bit harder each time.
Is there a lot of competition for the record?
There's a track burpee mile challenge, and the soft sand was a different version. I don't believe there's a lot of competition for it because, it takes a certain type of person to look that up and want to have a go at it, but I'm sure someone will have a crack one day, and good luck to them.
You're not looking to do it again and stretch the marker?
I think if someone had a go tomorrow and beat the record, then the way my brain works, I'd probably get back down the beach and get into it for sure.
Todd, so what does it actually take to break the record, but particularly the record with the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile?
It was an interesting lead up. So I hadn't done anything like it before, although I'd done plenty of burpees in years gone by with part of training and CrossFit sessions and things like that. But I was actually training for a burpee challenge, which was a fundraiser for soldiers and Sirens who support ex-military and ex-police. So I was going to do a burpee challenge because burpees just came to mind, and then it turned into a burpee soft sand challenge because I just ended up evolving into that as I was training. And the challenge was actually 5 kilometres of burpees, and this is just something that I worked out through the training sessions that would be ridiculous and worth a go. So the training for that started as just steady burpees with reasonable breaks. which I had in mind I was going to be there. If I was down there 5 hours, 10 hours or 2 days, I was going to be down the beach dragging myself through the sand and get it done as a fundraiser. So wasn't too fussed about if there was people there or not, or if it's dark and windy, just get it done. But then someone suggested that there's a Burpee mile world record that you could go for. So this is about with a couple of months to go. I had a look at that and went, oh, why not? Since I'm doing 5Ks, I might as well have a crack at the mile along the way, which my original thought was it's just the first mile and the rest is just part of the process. Until I looked at the time that I had to beat and I tried to replicate that in training in shorter sessions and realised I was way off the time. So my whole mission changed from the 5K challenge to the Burpee mile world record, and the rest of the 5Ks would have to come after that. I'll worry about that later. So when the mission changed, the training changed to how am I going to get under the time. And I did say 100 burpees non-stop, and then I'd have a break and then go again with the broad jump. And that gassed me out so much it took way too long after the break to then get going for the next 100. So that wasn't going to cut it. And then I started doing 10 really fast burpees as fast as I could and then have a break, and then 10 fast ones. That gassed me out too much, so the break was too long and I wasn't going to make it. But I found the sweet spot where I could do 10 steady broad jump burpees. Then I'd stand up, I'd stare at the sand for about 5 or 10 seconds, actually convince myself I was feeling good, and then go again for another 10. And I could do that consistently, just the mind game, I suppose. But as long as I didn't go too hard, too fast, it kind of worked for the time. It would have been borderline on the day. And at the end of the day, that process of 10 burpees, 5 or 10 seconds rest, 10 burpees was what got me through for the record time, yeah.
So you didn't actually do the burpees like continuously like you did, but you had a small break in between sets of them, so to like resettle.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had have gone continuously, I would have got maybe 500 metres out well under time. But by the time I pulled my body and brain back together, I would have been the time would have blown out. So I had to find a balance there somewhere where I was semi-recovering in a very short period and then get going for the next cycle. Ended up working quite well.
You already mentioned about doing a couple of different variants, like timing variants, and working out some didn't work as well for you. Were there other things that you needed to consider as well?
There was definitely a nutrition plan, which someone you've spoken to before, Damien Porter, helped me out a lot with, and he came up with a good concoction of real ketones, drinks and carbo shots and things like that. They gave me the energy. I had energy the whole day, even through the whole 5Ks, which was good. The next 3 weeks was different, but on the day it was good. And the other thing to consider was that there was a 5K. I had to do the whole 5Ks after the Burpee mile, but the reality is I had to worry about the mile and then worry about the second phase afterwards. So otherwise, I wouldn't have made the time for the first bit.
So a question that comes to mind is how long did it actually take to do the mile?
So the mile had to be under 2 hours, and it was an hour 48.
Wow. Okay. So it's a pretty significant, like it's a full energy thing that you're doing, like an activity that is as long as a football match or.
Yeah, it's kind of non-stop, and I was getting times for each. I was doing 500-metre laps between two groins down at the City Beach and Floreat Beach groins. So, and getting times, I knew where I kind of had to be. Funnily enough, I smashed the time on the first lap, which I knew would hurt me on the second lap, and that blew out on the second lap. The third lap was about where I needed to be. So, but it's a very strange sort of sport where even with say 100 metres, 50 metres to go, I could see the line, but I still wasn't sure how long it would take me to get there. So the doubt is always there whether you're going to get there in time, even though you can just about touch it. A Burpee broad jump isn't the fastest thing in the world, so but it ended up 12 minutes to play with, so that was good.
So you really beat that record by 12 minutes. That's how it turned out?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 12 minutes under the record. Yeah.
That's a pretty significant improvement in the record compared to what's happened previously. So, did you have support for this? Obviously, you talked about Damien and the nutrition side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it was a full team effort, as cliche as it is. But Burpee broad jumping is an individual sport when you're training. There's no one else seems to join in. I tried to get a few people to join in, but people were just more curious, what the hell are you doing? But on the day and before the day, I had people offering to help, and we had to do the world record. We had to get a surveyor down, so I had people from Sirens and Sirens organised a surveyor, and other people came down to do run two stopwatches. Had a exercise physiologist watching the burpees to make sure they were proper burpees, and then the whole team of people that I knew mostly that had come down throughout the day at different times and just walking along, encouraging. Most of them actually joined in with burpees, and even some of them had never done a burpee or had to Google what a burpee was before they did it. So there was some sore bodies the next day, but yeah, lots of people throughout the whole day really joined in and made it. It took my mind off the burpees, so it was it was a good, enjoyable day.
So you had a good amount of support on the day. And did you end up getting to the 5 kilometres?
Yeah, so it was a case of breaking the record or getting through the finish line for the record. And yeah, just some short high fives and drink breaks and quick celebration with a bit of a funny feeling of how much they've got to go, and then getting back into it after about 10 minutes before the body starts seizing up to continue the burpees for however long it was likely to take. But the rest of the 5 kilometres went better than expected. I thought, like I said, I could have been there 2 days or for all I knew, but it took around 7 hours all up for the 5Ks, so yeah, got through it.
7 hours, that's massive. Like there's very few events that would take that long. So that's an extremely high physical output that you needed to do that. That's, very impressive.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, it's funny, you find the parts that are going to hurt the most, I guess, doing so many, but the body held up all right, except the hips and the legs from doing the broad jumps is probably the biggest one, which is surprising. So, yeah, by the end of that, or the next day, I wasn't walking too well, walking like I'd been riding a horse for a while, so, but had fun.
Yeah, the fun element is probably the biggest driver, and maybe not the biggest motivation.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like your mind works in a particular way that allows you to find a challenge and take it on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think even before the tactical response group background and things, I'd always look for challenges, and the reason why I joined the police was because it was a bit of a challenge to get out there and dealing with people in the real world and things. So everything became a challenge. And when I left the police, I left about 5 years ago, but 3 years before I did the Burpee challenge, I left the police, and I was working hard day, night, etc., trying to get ahead, trying to do the right thing. But I realised after that couple of years that there was something missing, and I was starting to get quite fatigued and having a few medical issues, doing some labouring on construction sites and things, even to the point where I was getting blackouts every now and then, just probably from overworking and burnout. So I realised that the biggest thing I'd been missing since I left the TRG was any form of challenge. So that's kind of where the spark came in for the Burpee challenge, where I've got to get back into something that I used to do all the time. It's just giving myself a big challenge, that something just out of reach that I'll aim for, and something to really a big goal. So that's where the challenge came from, and that's how I've always done it. And realised, with a challenge in my life, things got a lot better, a lot smoother. So that's good.
Yeah, there's a great lesson in there about how having goals actually helps with things like mental health as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like, the reason Soldiers and Sirens exists is because of the difficulty of people transitioning from military and police areas and having seen the highs, the lows, and then going into life afterwards. I really think the challenge, having a challenge or having that goal is huge. I've learned, I knew the theory already, but I completely forgot in those couple of years when I was just working flat out. And then once I got back into it, I remembered how it should be.
It sounds like there's a very clear difference there between the activity where you're basically, I'll say, just working hard, and actually having a goal and something that you're chasing and looking to achieve.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, life without a goal or without any growth for me, and I would imagine it's the same for a lot of people, it just leads to burnout. It's just, well, I mean, what are you doing it for? You're just going around in circles. So one of the reasons I left TRG after 15 years was I wasn't getting a lot of growth out of it anymore because I've been doing that for so long. And then I forgot to give myself a challenge when I left, so it took me a couple of years, but slow down, but I get there.
You got there. That's the most important part, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So there are a lot of different things that come into play when you push yourself to do something like attempt a world record. There's not only the physical and preparation elements that you need to get yourself through, but there's a lot of mental strength that you need to apply to ensure that you reach your goals. We'll now take a short break, and after the break, we'll come back and look at what does this mean. We've seen how Todd breaking the world record for the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile engaged a number of people in the actual process. So, Todd, what did breaking the record mean for you, your family, or the community?
The primary reason I did the record, even thought of the challenge in the first place, was to do it as a fundraiser for Soldiers and Sirens, as I mentioned earlier. So the soldiers part being ex-military and the Sirens part being police and first responders. And they look after particularly mental health for those people from those areas and transitioning out of those areas and helping people through with that sort of thing. So what I really liked about them, the reason why I latched onto them was because there are other groups looking after ex-military personnel, but there are no other groups looking after ex-police. And police go through a lot of things, I'll say similar sort of things to ex-military, although the military guys, particularly when there's wars on and things, they go through some absolute chaos and deserve all the support they can get, for sure. But I don't see any reason why police shouldn't have a bit more support as well, where they're kind of constantly on. So in a 20-year police career, you don't have 6 months downtime. You're permanently out there dealing with whatever's in front of you, and there's all the hypervigilance and other issues that come with that. So it was awesome that these guys actually work with both military and police, and everyone in those areas deserves some support if they need it. My goal was to raise funds for them and raise awareness for soldiers and sirens as well at the same time, which actually worked really well. So as far as the community goes, a lot of people I knew, a lot of people in the area where I was actually found out about soldiers and sirens, and people donated as well, and there was some good money raised. So I think all in all, the goal to help them out and therefore help others out worked very well on the day.
It's always good to have a worthy cause to support. Todd, you mentioned briefly about how it had some physical impact on you. How long did that?
The actual event on the day with the good nutrition and people down there and support and things, it actually flew by, even though it was a 7-hour challenge. So when I say flew by, I didn't lose energy too much during the day, or I had the right nutrition to keep me going and the right encouragement. But afterwards, the next day and for about the next 3 to 3.5 weeks, it was a bit of a struggle to get off the couch, I'll say. So fully drained, energy was very low, and muscles were drained in the shoulders and the legs and everything. So that's okay. That's kind of what I expected. I thought it would kick in on the day, so I was quite happy that I'd got through the whole day without hitting the wall, basically. But on the day, probably the biggest sore point, and I worked this out through training as well, was the legs with the broad jumps. So a lot of broad jumps goes in there. I think it's close to 2,500 in that soft sand, as well as the back when I was training, as you imagine, with burpees. The reason why they got outlawed in the old days was because people were injuring themselves with their lower backs and things and not doing the proper technique. So I had to be careful with the technique, but my lower back really felt like it got strengthened a lot during the training. So that on the day, that wasn't so much an issue, and held in there quite well. Shoulders a bit sore, legs quite sore, but everything else is quite good.
Yeah, I guess the nutrition was really just enough to get you up on the day. After that, you've used up quite a lot of your reserves.
Yeah, I was covered in sweat from probably the first 2 minutes to the last 10 seconds and beyond. So, yeah, it was a lot going out, I guess, even though, it's a bit of fun and there's people there, just the sweat and the body fluids going out through that had to be replaced. So I think the nutrition worked out really well, and I thank Damien Porter very much for that. He works with Real Ketones Australia and just a mix of the ketones, which were, as he puts it, it gives you a different energy base, chews up the fat and other energy sources other than, you've got glucose, which is a quick, short, sharp energy, which gets chewed up quickly, and the ketones, which are the long-lasting energy. So the combination got me through, and very thankful for that.
Excellent. That's good that you had that nutrition, and it shows just how hard the effort was. That I imagine that you were already pretty fit. You'd done like 4 months worth of training, so it's not like you were unfit when you went in, but it still required quite a lot of recovery afterwards. That I think that just points to the intensity of the effort that you went through. So it's very, very impressive thing.
I have been known to do a challenge or two, which are not too huge, without training for it and just jumping on the day because other people are doing it. So always good for a laugh, but this was not one of those challenges. I was willing to have a crack on the day, and luckily I trained for the 4 months because having done a couple of training sessions, you realise how much it's going to take, and then kind of get to build up the training and plan to hit the 4 months in a pretty good condition. So that was, without training, it would have been a miserable day for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And what sort of impact did it have for your family?
My wife and kids were all down there. My parents were down there, brothers, sisters, people turned up from all walks of life, to be honest. So I guess it was fun having them along, but I suppose the big one would be my kids coming down, joining in, supporting, getting an idea of how my brain works and just seeing what I'm doing down there. So they're around 16 and 14 years of age now, so they have an understanding of what's going on quite well, and to see them down there joining in was awesome. And my wife is a bit of a physical machine anyway. She wins like 20Ks, ocean swims and things like that. But my kids, I think they are soaking it all up, and I see them out doing their own things, training, surfing, swimming. So if any of it rubs off them, very good. They're just having fun and enjoying life, so be it. But they got to see a bit of how I work and may not understand it, but they see it and enjoy it.
Sounds like you're setting a great example for the kids.
Trying every day.
So setting out to achieve a world record has a lot of meaning for the individual in all sorts of ways, and has positive mental effects and also physical, and also shows just how tough this can be, and plenty of good elements for the family and people around who can see people going for goals and achieving them, which is excellent. We'll have a break now, and after the break, we'll look at how you do it. We've had a look at what it means to go for a world record. Now, let's have a look at how you do it. Todd, how did you get yourself together to do this world record?
Yeah, the first step was just taking action basically. So getting started with some burpees and just seeing how it felt and where my weak points might be and what I might need to work on. So I was doing just small sets of 10 burpees up to 50 to 100 burpees, building up slowly. But then I realised certain areas were getting quite sore, so I did different things, little bits of weights in the gym, so some deadlifts, which seemed to be very specific for the same sort of muscles for the getting up and doing the broad jumps and things like that, as well as strengthening the lower back. So that came in handy, and also breaking it down into just push-ups and just squats, just squat jumps some days. So training specific for those, and then every second or third day I'd be down the beach doing the burpee broad jumps on the sand in the place where I was going to do it, just get used to the environment. My favourite days, funnily enough, were the ones where I'd sit in the car and the rain would be coming in sideways, and you don't want to do it, but that's perfect training, I guess, mentally. So get down there, as you're doing the push-ups, the sand's coming in your eyes, and there's no one even near the beach, the only car in the car park. So that was, I think the mental game is as big as the physical game. So those sort of days I've always found they're perfect because no one else is doing it. So perfect timing. If I had started from scratch, I'd always train consistently with surf boat rowing and different sports. So starting from scratch, I would have probably done more, broken up into push-ups and squats and just build up over 8 or 9 months rather than 4 months. But it's still quite doable if anyone was to wanted to jump in and have a go at it, then I'd say good luck to them, and I'm happy to give them some tips. And they got to try and beat their time later. But just break it down into small sections. The other thing, the mental game for me, it comes back to doing the tactical response group selection where you got 10 days of absolute physical beasting as well as mental games and working out how your attributes go under fatigue. But that whole 10 days, the people who don't make it are the ones in the first hour who are exhausted like everyone else, but they're thinking about the 10 days ahead of them. The ones who make it are the ones who are thinking about just getting another 5 minutes ahead or getting to the next lamppost or just doing 1% more than they can possibly do now. So one step at a time, 1% more, whatever you want to call it, was a lot of the mental game of getting burpees done. When you're talking about doing 1,500 metres of burpees in a training session in the worst storm in winter, and then it's just doing 10 burpees at a time and then stopping, reassessing my life and then just do another 10. Don't worry about the 3 laps. So, yeah, physical game, mental game, and all came together at the end.
Sounds like a very simple plan, but I'm sure it wasn't quite that simple on the way through.
No, there's a lot of thoughts come into it between just doing 1% more and then the brain goes into a full cycle of, well, you could be at home, sitting in front of the fire or whatever you want to do. So fighting the mental game is one thing, and then working out how to achieve it is another.
Yeah, absolutely. You've done quite amazing work there, Todd. I'm in awe at what you have achieved.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I was saying that says a lot, I'm sure. It's been quite amazing to hear just what goes into achieving a world record. There's so much more than you anticipate when you have a look at it from the outskirts. So Todd is one of those people who has been able to achieve that. So thank you very much for sharing your experience of achieving the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile world record, Todd. And from all Forest.chat listeners, we wish you all the best in your future endeavours.
Thanks, Paul, very much for having me, and wishing you all the best as well.
Thank you. You've been listening to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we talked with Todd Bowler about breaking the Burpee broad jump soft sand mile world record. Remember, there are 4 ways to get involved with Forest.chat. Share the domain Forest.chat with your friends and family and people you meet. Listen to the published episodes at forest.chat/episodes. Book an interview at forest.chat/interview. Book an advert at forest.chat/advert. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next interview. Until next time, enjoy making it happen.